According to Dean Lawrence, last week's meeting between officials from Christchurch Cathedral and insurance company NZI resulted in a small miracle.
I'm pleased to say that the design criteria for the repair and restoration of the cathedral was established and accepted. That is, the way in which the engineers will do their work to restore the building has been agreed on.
Although the 102-year-old building has been made safe since the quake, major structural repairs, estimated at around $17 million, are still needed. Last month, MLC Paul O'Grady raised the matter in Parliament, accusing NZI of being incompetent and behaving appallingly.
I think that certainly raised in the consciousness of people in Newcastle the fact that something really needed to happen.
Since then, an independent consultant's report has been completed, helping architects and engineers on both sides to work out how the repairs should be carried out. But the waiting game is far from over. It will take at least another 6 months before both the Heritage and Newcastle Councils approve plans and allow work to finally begin.
It has really taken far too long, we all agree about that, but at least it's done.
It was the promise of better care that gave leukaemia patients hope when the haematology unit was moved from the Royal to the Mater 3 years ago. Instead, they've been forced to cope with intense chemotherapy and long periods in isolation under the most basic conditions.
You have a bowl to wash in because there's no showers in there, and you have a commode to use, which is really undignified and very degrading that somebody else has to empty that after you all the time.
The hospital agrees the situation is not good, but says the problems will soon be resolved. $3.4 million have helped build new facilities for cancer patients. 2 floors of air-conditioned rooms complete with private en-suites.
We've got very modern facilities here. It is going to be state-of-the-art buildings, furnishing and accommodation for the patients.
The wards are expected to be open in January, but patients like Mary were told the new facilities would be finished 2 months ago. The hospital says extra work is being carried out, but Mary argues the delay will mean she'll be forced to have her bone marrow transplant in what she describes as unhygienic surrounds.
Because I'm going to be in isolation and I don't want to go through no showers and no toilet facilities again, which I'm going to have to do now.
"66-year-old John Victor Brown was beaten and stabbed to death in his home at the entrance in March this year. He'd been attacked with a number of implements, including a knife and beer bottle. An acquaintance, Irene Margaret Starr, has pleaded not guilty to murdering him, but guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of provocation. Today, she told Newcastle Supreme Court she fell asleep at Mr Brown's home, and when she awoke, he was trying to have oral sex with her. "I would not have lost control if he hadn't provoked me with that sexual act." Irene Starr admitted she had lied to police about whether she had gone to John Brown's home. However, she said she was very confused and she couldn't remember having killed him. Mrs Starr says before she met Mr Brown, she'd been subjected to a number of sexual assaults by other men. In earlier evidence, Constable David O'Hagan said that in April this year, Mrs Starr told him, "I don't know why I killed that guy." The trial will continue tomorrow. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Potential star was working on the course proper for the first time at Caulfield this morning when it came to the crossing at the 1200 metres, damaging its offside front tendon.
But he's evidently done some damage to his other leg too. He was very sore in it, so he's evidently, when he jumped, they said he twisted sideways and he's just come down wrong on his leg.
The 5-year-old finished its work before stable foreman Stephen Davies noticed the swelling 45 minutes later. This afternoon, potential star underwent an intensive examination, scanning equipment revealing damage to both front legs, filling and fluid making tests inconclusive. Lee pessimistic about its future. It's a major blow for the Lee stable, who went through similar despair with Coronation Day, when it was favourite for the Doncaster and broke down.
Well, I don't think I've ever had a horse improve like this horse did in the last 12 months. You know, he's been going really well, and he was a horse that was going to be right in a race like that, you know, and a few of the other races down there.
Lee's hopes for the Spring Carnival now rest with Canberra Cup winner Nasser Biddy, which has now been set for the Sandown Cup.
St John's Anglican Church at Cessnock was overflowing in a special memorial service for Reg and Pam Drayton. Their children Robin and Stephen saying their last goodbyes. Rector of Cessnock, Father Christopher Butterworth, said before the service the family had now accepted that Pam and Reg had died on that tragic flight to visit friends on Lord Howe. The couple were married 35 years ago. Reg recognised around the world as a talented vigneron, a father figure in establishing the hunter's fine reputation. In the eulogy, Bruce Tyrrell said the Draytons were gentle people, dedicated to their family. It was one of the biggest services seen in the coalfields. More than 400 people from the wine and tourism industries, plus friends and family, grieving a tragic loss. There will be more services for the 9 people lost on the Seaview flight. A memorial will be held for the newlyweds Anthony and Lisa Atkinson on Friday at Cooks Hill. The service held at the same church they were married in just 11 days ago. And the Lake family will have a special service on Saturday at Rathmines. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
When the number of jobs advertised in the month of September were compared with last year's, they'd risen by nearly 40%.
It suggests that there are going to be more jobs coming online and that this slowdown in employment growth is temporary.
In line with national trends, the vacancies have come from a number of sectors. More than half are found in the tourism, retail and service industries, with a steady fall in coal, aluminium and electricity production. One of the biggest surges has been in building. Economists believe, along with the prospect of higher interest rates, it's a general boost in confidence that's strengthening the building industry. Approvals for new homes are up by nearly 24%, a rise predicted to have a healthy flow-on effect.
Demand is increasing, and this of course will encourage firms to produce more and expand production, expand employment.
Meanwhile, the federal government has enlisted the support of Rotary clubs to help lower the unemployment figure. Since Employ Australia was launched 2 weeks ago, businesses across the country are being made aware of generous wage subsidies designed to create more jobs.
Well, the CES has received 493 vacancies since the campaign began. Many of those are ones that we would have ordinarily got, but we've also got, it seems that there's been an increase with the interest from Employ Australia.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. This
This is what the new bridge will look like when it's completed. Today, though, workmen were installing a 400-tonne crane to lift the 21 beams in place. The new bridge will be 3.5 metres above the high tide mark and will provide vehicle, cycle and pedestrian access. It's one of several projects taking shape on the Honeysuckle site. Just up the road, the Bellevue Hotel is boarded up. It was bought last week by the Honeysuckle Development Corporation for a price it won't disclose. This is what the corporation envisages the Bellevue will look like. Its use, though, still to be determined.
I wouldn't envisage it staying as a pub. I think it will probably have an alternate use, but at this stage we haven't really had any definite plans in that regard.
And there's also a hive of activity at Lee Wharf.
Currently we're restoring 2 of the buildings, and if anyone cares to travel down Wharf Road, they'll notice the roofs just going on. We're about to start the painting work as well. The rest of the buildings, we've received development approval to demolish those buildings sometime in the next month or so. We'll commence that work.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The other thing is our chandelier. We're very, very proud of the chandelier. It goes to about that height. You don't fill the whole room. What?
It's rare.
Yes, and we gave all the old seats away. They're all over the joint at the moment. They're very interested.
The Gladiators Motorcycle Club has its headquarters in Maitland in the Lower Hunter, with Portland Street dubbed Gladiator Boulevard. It's where 4 search warrants were executed this morning. The clubhouse and 3 nearby houses were searched by police. At the same time, 8 houses and businesses in Thornton, Weston and New Lambton were targeted. Police began at 6 o'clock. The operation lasted through the day. Drug equipment was confiscated, along with thousands of dollars in alcohol. The club's premises is not licensed. Police have yet to determine whether there's been a breach of the Licensing Act. Police left nothing unturned in their search. The clubhouse was combed inside and out. Around 4 members assisted police with their inquiries. They watched on as 3 motorbikes were taken away. Today's operation was the result of police gathering information over the last 6 months. More than 50 police were involved, from the Drug Enforcement Agency through to the National Crime Commission.
And as we do the search of the houses, records are being searched and seized to look at various assets that might be controlled by the motorcycle club, and the Crime Commission is looking at the confiscation of those assets immediately.
In all, more than $250,000 in assets, including this house and an adjacent block of land, have been seized by police until it's determined how they were financed. The raid on the Gladiators follows 2 recent attacks on motorcycle clubhouses in the Hunter. Just 2 weeks ago, the Islington headquarters of the Nomad Club was riddled with bullets, while the Muswellbrook premises was firebombed.
At this stage, the intelligence gathering for this particular operation was commenced well before any of the ruckus started through the different motorcycle clubs throughout Newcastle and Muswellbrook. So we don't believe that those incidents or the operation here today are related in any way.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The Tanambit project involved the Department of Conservation and Land Management, Shortland Wetlands Centre and Hunter Catchment Management Committee in a venture that would see the wetlands restored and used to counteract the effects of development.
And also to show as a demonstration site that you can have sensitive wetlands and bird life and wildlife in association with industrial and urban development.
The scheme would have given 12 long-term unemployed jobs planting trees, constructing lakes and islands and building toilet and barbecue facilities. But storm clouds were brewing overhead. $350,000 allocated by the federal government under the LEAP project was withdrawn 2 months ago after council stalled the application. Ironically, the conditions that council originally placed on the project included a fauna impact study, environmental safeguards and flood mitigation, and an Aboriginal archaeological survey on a site that had for a long time been badly degraded.
What we've got is a council who really doesn't know anything about these areas, are not expert in them, asking for expert advice from the experts who are trying to rehabilitate this area.
The council this week approved the project, but it's at the bottom of the queue for federal funding. Those behind the scheme, which would be both a resource for councils and schools and a tourist attraction, are determined to push ahead. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News. The Upper Hunters Mines and Pacific Power's Bayswater and Liddell power stations have long been licensed to pump saltwater waste into rivers.
Mines have needed to discharge saline waters, irrigators have needed water at a quality that was fit for irrigation, and sometimes there's been a conflict between those uses.
After 3 years of consultations with landholders and industry, the Environment Protection Authority today released a licensing scheme that has across-the-board support. Limited saltwater discharges will be allowed only when the river flow is high, an estimated 24 days a year. Unlimited discharge will be permitted when the river is at flood levels. Merit points, which may be traded or sold, will also be given to companies that improve their performance.
We have set the limits on the conductivity of the river very conservatively to take account of the need for water quality for irrigation in particular, and to make sure that in fact there was also an environmental buffer.
Water quality monitoring will continue. The scheme is set to begin next year and could be a model for other areas if successful.
Finch held extensive talks with new coach Malcolm Reilly in England, the pair discussing a 5-year plan for the club and a comprehensive pre-season training program which will begin on October 29. The former Great Britain coach will arrive on November 6 and has been impressed with what he's seen on video this season.
He's very happy with what he sees. He does see a lot of improvement and development within the side. Obviously we need some areas to develop in certain positions, but he's very happy with the playing strength of the club.
To improve that strength, Reilly has lured 2 international footballers to the club for next year, both likely to be available for the second half of the season and the semi-finals.
Until the final contractual arrangements are organised and signed, you can appreciate that we really can't name the players, but they are well-credentialed footballers and will have a great impact on the Newcastle team.
Morty was hopeful of staging Zoo's bid to become the next IBF welterweight world champion at Marathon Stadium. But Morty says connections of his opponent, Jake Rodriguez, asked for an impossible purse to bring him to Australia, and the fight will now be held in Las Vegas. If successful, Morty is determined to stage Zoo's first defence in Newcastle around April next year. Meantime, the Matara Historic Rally returned to Newcastle today after being abandoned in the early 70s. 22 entrants began the rally at Nobby's Beach for the 360-kilometre hike through the Hunter, which concludes at Raymond Terrace tomorrow. And finally, a 5-man team from Wyong's Moon Terror Archery Club has entered the Guinness Book of Records for the highest point score in a 24-hour period. They began their quest at 4:15 p.m. yesterday, finishing this afternoon, ignoring fatigue through the night to raise hundreds of dollars for the Cancer Foundation. Gary Harley's pick Paris Lane smashing the track record for the 2400 metres and giving Oliver a win on his first day back from suspension. Alcove and Tanner ran on well, with Epsom winner Paul Perry's Navy SEAL finishing last. In Sydney there was better luck for another local in the City Tattersalls Club Cup over the same distance. Trained by Max Lee, surrender now returned $8.20 and $2.60. The trifecta $1,806.80.
Research into the effectiveness of recent anti-skin cancer advertising campaigns has revealed that while attitudes are changing, behaviour patterns are not.
In the last 10 years there have been dramatic changes in the amount of knowledge that people have and also in improving attitudes. Although there's been changes in behaviour, that's lagging a little bit behind.
11 to 16-year-olds are cooking under the sun in their efforts to look cool among peers. Tans are in, hats are out.
They're the most difficult group, I think. Underneath that age, parents have a lot of sway, and over that age they probably make up their own minds, but 11 to 16 really are the difficult group. But the good news is that at least they're increasingly using sunscreen, which is not the preferred form of protection, but at least they are wearing some sort of protection.
While 90% of young teenagers were aware of the dangers, only 48% of girls and 60% of boys surveyed used high-level sun protection. The New South Wales Cancer Council is about to launch a new advertising campaign for summer and recommends the following outdoor wear.
Really want to see them wearing a hat, a shirt with sleeves and a collar, and then using 15 plus on all the exposed areas.
Melissa and Carly are leading a two-puppet fight against ignorance about cancer. Camp Quality helps young sufferers deal with cancer. The puppets help their friends come to terms with the disease. The show draws on the questions most youngsters ask. What is cancer? How is it treated? And what effects does it have? Helen Kennedy and Pam Law are two of the Camp Quality puppeteers who brought the show to more than 300,000 children around the state, dispelling myths as they go.
I think they come to realise that cancer is not the threatening thing that is perceived to be, and that it can be dealt with. And also they realise that they can't catch it, therefore it's okay to be with people that have cancer and to care for them.
And for the audience at Gateshead West Primary School in Lake Macquarie, it's a lesson they'll never forget.
Well, it was interesting and everyone here liked it.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Janine Robin Alexander died after she was shot once through the head with a .303 calibre rifle 3 days before last Christmas. Her husband, Paul Alexander, is on trial in Newcastle Supreme Court, charged with murdering Janine. Mr Alexander initially told police his wife had shot herself, but ballistic tests showed that was not possible. When police confronted him, he confessed that he had shot her at their Arimba home on the Central Coast. Paul Alexander has pleaded not guilty to murder, but guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of provocation. Alexander says there were many arguments about the 2 children from his first marriage. She wanted me to adopt them out or just get rid of them. The children had run away from home 14 months earlier. The couple argued over them coming home for Christmas. Alexander had wanted them reunited with their other 3 children. He told the court, "I had a feeling of hopelessness." Alexander says he considered suicide, but the following night, after further arguments, he turned the gun on Janine. The trial is continuing. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The balance sheet spells disaster for the Leagues Club. A loss of $88,000 has been reported in the last 12 months. The year before, the club made a $38,000 profit. Gilbert Hicks has been president for just 2 days and says urgent action needs to be taken. He says the loss is due mainly to a downturn in bar trading and poker machine revenue.
The poor result we've had, we have to prove to our banks that we can turn it around before we start thinking of major extensions. We might be able to do a few minor adjustments to make it more comfortable for our members in the short term, but long range major extensions will have to be shelved at this stage.
The new board is meeting on Thursday to formulate a plan of attack, which may include incentives to attract younger people to the club. Tracy Walsh, NBN News. Carers aren't paid for their services. It's a job done for the satisfaction that goes along with helping those who can't help themselves. 50 people reside at Glacier House and carers are needed to help run the hostel. Betty Sarker helps keep the minds of the elderly active with word games. She's also volunteered to help with personal care and grooming. Betty first became involved in caring because her mother is a resident and she spends at least 1 day at the centre each week.
We seem to have lost a lot of our carers here. We had a lot of people who used to do arts and crafts, and there's not much of this going on. These people need stimulation all the time, otherwise they become room-bound, and we don't want that happening.
The administrator says it's becoming increasingly difficult to balance the budget without the assistance of carers.
There has been a drop, yes. I don't really know the reason for that. I suppose people just get busier.
Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
It's taken 4 years to develop the software described as groundbreaking. Using satellite imaging and remote sensing, Pinpoint has a huge range of applications. In simple terms, a sample of the image is separated. In the case of locating blue-green algae, the selected field is compared across the whole image of a lake to locate identical matches. Peter Scott has helped refine the technology and believes it has huge potential in the medical field in the detection of cancer cells.
Even the smallest speck on the screen you can't really see with your eye, but when you zoom in with the magnification tools and the software, it becomes very, very obvious that that was something that was the same as you'd been looking for.
With limited research budgets, hospitals have been reluctant to adopt the new technology. But at around $60,000 for the entire package, overseas countries are knocking on the door.
It's usually less than a third the price of any competitive product from overseas. And as a result of that, it's going fairly well in China and in Asia.
Meanwhile, software developers believe if Pinpoint was used by environmental agencies, its potential would be unlimited.
In terms of land management, monitoring erosion, salinity, there's enormous possibilities.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Over the last decade, the Ironman and its competitors have enjoyed national exposure, which will continue this weekend with round 2 of the Uncle Toby Super Series in Newcastle. Locals Joshua Blair, Guy Andrews and Drew Blatchford all entered. But the region also has a representative in the Devondale Iron Woman Series, in 16-year-old Peter Starr. A product of the North Entrance Club, Peter won a place in the $100,000 series by taking out the qualifying event on the Gold Coast.
I went out to Queensland. I didn't really know what to expect. I just thought I'd give it a go and what happens, happens. And I was lucky enough to win it. I put in a lot of effort to do it.
Due to that performance, she now finds herself competing against her childhood heroes in Carla Gilbert and Sam O'Brien, many believing she can one day emulate their success.
We're expecting big things of her, and I think that she'll go all the way and give some of the bigger names a big shock by the end of the finals.
In December, Peter will also attempt to qualify for the inaugural Tui's Blue Women's Triathlon Series, but at the moment is focused on the surf, attempting to finish in the top 8 this Sunday in what is her home event for the season.
Well, there'll be a lot of people from around the area that I know up there watching. I think that's an added bonus from my side. I haven't actually competed at Newcastle Beach before, so that won't be much of an advantage. I just go out and give it my best shot.
In favour of that amended, the new resolution.
What's this one? Oh, yeah.